Okay, so are we ready? Okay, so today we're going to talk about Zeus. It's one of the 8 Uranian planets that I work with. And I think the most important thing that you need to know about Uranian astrology is that it was discovered in the trenches of World War I by a German, and he was also an astrologer. And I guess he had a lot of time in his hands in the trenches because he would do astrology charts on the soldiers, the officers, and whoever else that he ran into. And he began noticing that when there was some sort of transformational change, which meant the soldier got wounded, the soldier got killed, the soldier may have gotten a letter from a loved one saying that his wife just had a baby and the baby's fine. But those types of transformational moments. And what he found in all of this was is that at this time, nobody knew about Pluto. And in 1918, the last planet that we knew of in our solar system was Neptune. And so he began to understand that when these moments, these important moments in that soldier's life, the known 8 solar planets that we had at that time, plus the sun and the moon, the luminaries, they weren't as active or not active at all to show the event. And so he couldn't figure it out. And so what he started doing was he must have done hundreds or thousands of charts. I have no idea how many, but it must have been a lot because he ended up making an ephemeris along with some help of some other male astrologers from Germany after the war was done. And he came up with 8 planets. And it wasn't until I think 1975, I went to an astrology convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA. And I looked at what was on the venue of, what did I want to learn? And the one thing that got my attention is that there was going to be a workshop on Uranian astrology. And I had never heard of a Uranian astrology. So I'm a Gemini and I've got a very keen curiosity. I ask a lot of questions. Drives people nuts. But I went there because I didn't know what they were. And Professor Charles Emerson, who was from a university on the East Coast of the United States, had trained in with Reinhold Ebertin for many years, who also was from Germany, but he also trained in, and I don't know who he trained in with the Uranian astrology, but it was somebody from Alfred Witz's group that he trained and studied with. And Charles Emerson was the first person to bring Uranian astrology to the United States at that time. And I got to tell you, I'm clairvoyant, and I've been clairvoyant all my life. And when I heard Uranian astrology, I knew it sounded familiar to me, really familiar. And when I went to his workshop, I had a complete download of where I was an astrologer back in Atlantis. I was an astrologer many times in Atlantis, many incarnations. And we worked with these planets at that time, besides the known 9 that we have nowadays. And everybody's prognosticating that Atlantis was about 13,000 years ago, give or take, and went down into the flood that occurred that took probably about 90% of humanity with it. Kind of scourged and cleaned up things because they were off the rails, off the trolley. And so this is like starting over. It's like putting your hand across a table and just pushing everything off and start all over again. So they did. And I survived that. I saw a lot of it happen. And so I was having all these downloads and memories as he's talking about these. And when he was done with his workshop, I tag teamed him and said, we need to talk. And I said, let me buy you lunch. So he was fine with that. So we went and we had lunch and we talked for 4 hours. I didn't go to any other workshops in that 2 days. And he obviously had been an Atlantean astrologer also. And one of the main things that he said about these planets, he says, you're not going to see them. And he says, I'm really worried about that because he said astrologers have to see it in order to believe it. And I looked at him and I said, well, maybe you men do, but I said, women are far more clairvoyant than most of you guys, and we can have a sense or a feeling about it. But I said, given what it is, I said, I agree that most people, if you say your Admetos is here and your Hades is there and your Kronos is over here, they're not going to believe anything you say because there's no solid eyes on it kind of proof. And I said, well, what is the reason for it? I said, where are these points? He referred to them as sensitive points. I refer to them as planets, one and the same. So don't get it mixed up. Don't make anything of it. And I said, where are these at? Now, I'm a shaman, and sometimes I have to throw things like this into this just to keep you alert. I go to a lot of other dimensions. This is a multiverse. I'm not always here in this particular universe. I can be in, I think the most dimensions I have gone through for a journey for somebody is 28 dimensions, and you feel each one of them. And so that was why I asked him, I said, where are these at? And he said, they're in the fourth dimension. He says, this is what's coming. He says, it's out there. And he says it absolutely, the energy is there, even though people can't see it. He says that energy is working at 100% capacity, but it's dumbed down the frequency of it because the fourth dimension, you're going to hear me say 4D or 4D plus. That simply means the fourth dimension or the fourth dimension and other dimensions. Okay. We live in 3D, the third dimension. We have three sides. We can't see through to the fourth side. If you were in the fourth dimension, you'd see all four sides simultaneously, and so on. Anyway, he said that this frequency had to be dumbed down, those are his words, not mine, so that the frequency, when it came in, we were not going to be able to see it because of the lower frequency. If we were a higher frequency being, and the third dimension has only so much frequency that a human body can handle. And if you get above that frequency, the body begins to disintegrate and dissolve right in front of your face. So these sensitive points, if that's what you want to call them, or I call them planets, they're actually archetypes of energy. And I let the people know that, hey, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. It's just like electricity. You don't see it, but you see the effect of it. You don't see gravity, but here you are, you're standing up, you're not floating away. And there's many things we can't see that we can prove. Okay. And this is one of those things, is the Uranian planets. But I can guarantee you, I started working with the Uranian planets in the 90-degree dial, which is Reinhold Ebertein's area of expertise. Back in 1975, when I got home, I had lots of astrology clients because I was a medical astrologer, and there's not a lot of medical astrologers in the world because they have to have a medical background in order to do it. You have to know what you're doing. You can kill somebody if you don't know what you're doing and you call yourself a medical astrologer. So I'll just leave it at that. And I began converting all of my natal people into medical astrology. And in 1980, I wrote the book Medical Astrology, and the Book of Nutrition and Medical Astrology was the name of it. And when I got the rights back to it, years later, I shortened the name to Medical Astrology by Eileen Nauman. And so that's where it's at. It's on Amazon. It's worldwide. It's a global bestseller, and it's saved a lot of people's lives. And I'm very grateful for that. My mother was an herbalist, and she was a family lineage herbalist. And the first daughter of every generation that came down got the formula book on the herbs. And we were raised on herbs. We weren't raised on doctors like you folks go to a doctor every time for everything. I only saw a medical doctor 3 times the first 18 years of my life. The rest of the time, my mother was either laying hands on us and healing us with her healing energy abilities, and or she was making us an herbal tea or an infusion, or she would make a salve and put it on our chest so that we would get rid of the chest cold and things like that. So I didn't really see too many medical doctors, which was, to me, it's a good thing. Nowadays we have too many, at least in the United States. I can't speak for Africa. But anyway, these planets, you are not going to see them, but I can prove this to you. Okay. I can't prove it to you today because we're just talking about one of 8 of these incredible, powerful archetypal planets. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a little taste of what else you could learn about it. And then you can find out where your Zeus is at, or where your Admetos is at, or where your Apollon or Caputo is at. And you're going to discover that, especially when we use the 90-degree dial that Ebertine uses, it shows immediately where these Uranian planets are working with the seen planets in this solar system of ours, our Noah 9 and our luminaries. You're going to see so many things. And so I'm going to give you a taste of what else I could teach you about this so that you can, there's ephemeris out on Uranian planets, and somebody might buy one and share it with everybody or whatever, so you can find out where they're at in your chart. I'm going to show you a shortcut that's really going to blow you away, but you'll get to do it on your own time. It's not part of this workshop. If you want me back to do that, that's a different story. But today it's Zeus. And so let's talk about Zeus. You notice that it is an arrow and it has a feathered tail. Okay. Literally, anytime I say Zeus, you can think about an archer with an arrow that is flaming, and he's pulling back his bow and he's letting it fly. And if you want a graphic imaginary of symbol for him, it is a arrow that is going somewhere specific. It is focused, it's on fire, which means there's a lot of energy and impact in it, and nothing's going to get in its way. Nobody gets between an arrow and where it's supposed to go. Okay. So just hold that as a preliminary here, and we're going to get into some really deep stuff, some fun stuff that has to do with mythology, it has to do with medical astrology, and it has to do with psychology and personality and characteristics. And those are the three areas we're going to explore today with Zeus. Okay, so the Zeus symbol, I said it's an arrow shooting skyward with a sextile aspect on its tail. And it does look like a sextile, doesn't it? At least in my imagination, it does. And a sextile is a soft aspect, and it's also an aspect, is what I call a workhorse aspect. A sextile means that we're going to get two planets together that are 60 degrees apart, and we're going to put them in a team, and they're going to plow a field for us. They're going to do something, they're going to work together in a good way, in a positive way for you to go do something, to create something, or to move, or do something with your business and make it better than it was. Sextiles are workhorse aspects. And so that's on the tail of Zeus. We have an arrow up front and we got the sextile at the end. And this means quite literally that an arrow is always focused, and that's the big word you want to underline 3 times here. Zeus is focus. And on top of that, it's laser focused. If you've ever seen a laser light, it's very thin, usually it's red or green, but it's very thin. And it has a very specific target it wants to hit, that it wants to pinpoint. So you can literally see the sextile aspect on this particular symbol is about working together to do something. And that is also Zeus, but I'm going to really quantify it and qualify it here. So Zeus was the king of gods in the Greek mythology. He threw thunderbolts at people. Also, he had his daughter, Pallas Athena, was given sole propriety to use and throw the thunderbolts also, and she did. Anyway, the arrow on the tail was the fire. And if you've ever seen lightning hit something, there's definitely a fire there, especially if it hits a tree. So I want you to keep all of these different kind of disparate things. They're like puzzle pieces that I'm going to put together here for you today. But symbols are also wonderful pieces of the puzzle too, and they also complete the puzzle. So we'll be getting back to that by the end of today. Okay, so here's the mythology part of Zeus. Zeus's father was Kronos, and interestingly enough, Kronos is one of the known 8 Uranian planets. So just keep that in the back of your head. The Romans called Kronos, called him Saturn. So they changed up the name a little bit. But Kronos stands alone. So don't say that they're one and the same, because they are not. Saturn is Saturn, Kronos is Kronos. And anyway, Zeus's father, Kronos, was the son of the Titans, and they were the first giants that came here to the world hundreds of thousands of years ago. And they were called the Titans because they were giants. They were very, very tall people, very muscular, very stocky. And Uranos, which is Uranus, and Gaia, it was Mother Earth. And Kronos overthrew his father with the help of his mother. And then they became rulers of the universe. And so, it began a family, step by step, things changed within the family, and that was the first step. Well, the second step is that Kronos then married Rhea, his sister, and we won't go into the sexuality of that. And she gave birth to the great gods of the Greek mythology that most of us have read during the 19th, 21st century. And it also included Poseidon or Neptune. They were called one and the same, but Poseidon is also another of the Uranian planets, and Neptune is Neptune. Neptune is 3D, Poseidon is 4D. To prevent the reoccurrence of his father's fate, Kronos decided to swallow each of his children as they were born. His last son born, Zeus, was hidden. When Zeus became old enough, he forced Kronos to vomit up his siblings, which was Hades. Hades is another of the Uranian planets. Hera, Hestia, Demeter, and Poseidon. Poseidon is also a Uranian planet. They then overthrew the reign of the Titans and Kronos. And Poseidon / Neptune was assigned god of the oceans by his brother Zeus. So you had another step in the family traditions. Lots of transformation. Okay, I want to get into Zeus psychology. That's enough mythology for you for today. Leader examples of Zeus: General Patton, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Napoleon, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who, interestingly enough, I'm giving this talk on June 6th, which is when June 6th was D-Day during World War II, when the U.S. and over 1 million American soldiers went ashore on the coast of France to attack the Nazis and to get them out of there. And so June 6th is a very important day for us. So I love the symbology of this, but I also love the synchronicity because there's a warlike drum beating in Zeus also. And we're talking about one of the war planets from a Uranian standpoint. Okay, the other psychology is a feeling of destiny, a reason for being alive. Zeus people are driven to achieve a particular goal, and they are a goal achiever. Everything is a goal. They have the steps in place, they've organized it, they're disciplined, and they're going after it. Remember what I told you earlier. Zeus is the arrow that's been fired by the archer, and it's on fire, and that tail is about working with whatever they've got to work with, and they're going to manifest to make something of it. In other words, they'll kill the person at the other end that gets the arrow. So there is also, I want to take just a second here and explain something. Matter of fact, I'll get it out of I probably can't even show it on this thing. Everybody knows what a ruler is, right? A measuring ruler. They used to be wooden. Sometimes they're made out of metal. And it's either in inches or centimeters or whatever you use in your country. And you can apply this ruler concept to every planet, known and seen, or not known and unseen. Every planet has a dark end to it and has a light end to it. And in the middle is the gray area. Okay, you have black, you have white, you have dark, you have light, and in the middle, there's a gray. And what you want to try and achieve in your incarnation usually is to be in harmony with yourself and in balance, which means you're somewhere in the middle of that. Well, every planet, whether it's the known 9 or the Uranian planets, all have this. There is no one planet that is the bad planet, okay? And I'm sure that all of you, if I ask you, who are the bad planets of the known 9, you're going to come up immediately with Saturn and then Pluto. That's it, okay? And in Uranians, it's going to be Hades and Admetos. And so it's there, but that's not the end of them. You have to remember that the Uranian planets were discovered during a world war. So of course there's going to be a lot of blood and killing and explosions and people losing limbs and everything that war means is horrible. Okay. That's when the Uranians were born, or at least came down and filtered down into our 3D world so that we could begin to use that higher frequency of energy and hopefully slide over to the light end and become more like them. The higher octave of Zeus, Zeus is the higher octave of Jupiter. So Jupiter is 3D, Zeus is 4D. They work together. They're very similar in some ways, but they still have very distinctive personalities. One thing with Zeus, Jupiter versus Zeus, if you do Jupiter, there are no limits or limitations to Jupiter. It's like if I take a glass of water and spread it across, put it on the table, and I spill the water is going to go everywhere on the table. There is no boundaries to stop it. It just flows everywhere. It has no ability to contain itself. That's Jupiter. But the higher frequency, okay, the higher frequency is demanding and asking of us not to be so expansive to the point to where it's out of control. We want to control the expansion. And so Zeus, and the first thing I said about it is the one word you wanted to use with Zeus is focus, laser-like focus. Zeus is different than Jupiter because Zeus knows where it's going, and Zeus puts in the blueprint and figures it out and then goes after it like a dog on a mission, and nothing's going to stop it from getting to whatever the end point is or the finality of it is. So that's where Jupiter and Zeus are different. But as we begin to try and become better human beings and more of the heart, less of the head, less of the mental logic, more into our feelings, our emotions, because the heart's voice is our intuition. And did you know, this is a little medical, did you know? You should really keep it on you because it's very handy. Did you know that in the left central part of the front of our brain is logic and the mental? On the right-hand side, it is our creativity, our artistry, our dance, our visionaries, our inventors are all over here. And so this ability to think and know what to do and always frame it in a logical, mental kind of way, which is what our scientists do nowadays. They're totally left brain. There's no room for creativity, artistry, or intuitiveness, or mysticism, or knowing anything about something that just because we can't prove it doesn't mean we aren't right. There's people who know things, lots of things that they don't speak about. I'm one of those people. And I was raised in a metaphysical family. And I was taught from about the time I was 7 years old on how to start using these skill sets that I came in with. And so I'm more Zeus because I'm focused. I know what I'm doing and I know where I need to go and I know how to organize it such that we can get there. And so that's the difference between left brain logic and right brain intuitive. Your left brain has, and this is a medical fact, has nerve endings that go down to our larynx, our voice box right here. Our left brain, we can sit there and yammer out loud to everybody. But by the same token, there are other nerve endings that go down to the heart. And the heart voice is our intuition. That's how it speaks to us. It's our feelings. So this is getting a little off Zeus and Jupiter, but not by far. But just understand that Zeus can be a really great person of the light, or they can be a really evil person. It depends upon what their incarnation is and how old or young or middle-aged their soul is. This is to how they're going to handle the energy. And that is so for everything, whether it's the Noah 9 or the unseen 8. So I said with Zeus, they all feel driven. Now, they may not know, especially as a child, they may not know what they're driven toward, but they have a drive in them that is just absolutely there, and it's on and it's working. And these children sometimes are called hyperactive or ADHD. They can't sit still. They've got to be doing something. They've got to be building something. They're doing something somewhere that has a focus. That is very Zeus-like. So give these children lots of things to do and find out what their skill sets are. I found out when I was, I think, 7 years old. No, I was 8. My brother was 6, and he had gotten an erector set for Christmas. And I don't know if you know what an erector set is, but it's aluminum things, and you build superstructures, and there's nuts and there's bolts with it, and there's cables, and there's all kinds of things that you can build with. It's like building an engine in a car, literally. But what was interesting is that my sister and I dolls for that Christmas. We opened them up and we went, oh, and we set them aside and we went over to where my brother had got his erector set, and all 3 of us are taking things out and we're starting to build them. That's, go figure it out. I'm still building things to this day. So Zeus is about a drive within the person that they may or may not know about. And if you have a child like that and they're constantly doing things, see what they want to do, see what interests them. I know my mother, when I was 9 years old, for Christmas, gave me a little medical doctor's bag, and inside of it was a stethoscope and a blood pressure cuff and some other things. And I was just overjoyed. I had always wanted to be in medicine, and she saw that in me. And sure enough, later on, I became an emergency medical technician, which is a licensed medical duty that you do. And I got my medical license in Arizona. I don't know that you have emergency medical technicians in South Africa. You probably have something like them, although it may not be named that. And here in the United States, an EMT is the person who is either on the fire truck or the ambulance, and we're the first people at the scene, whatever the scene is. And we are charged with figuring out who's going to live, who's dying, or what we can do to stop the bleeding or to stop the shock or whatever. We're trained to know what life and death things look like, feel like, and you hear, and you get your hands, which are in gloves, of course, bloodied. So as an EMT, I learned a whole lot in that area. And interestingly enough, it's a very Zeus kind of thing. When you are in, okay, either as a policeman or a firefighter, or if you're a paramedic or an EMT, your personality has to be such that you're not allowing your emotions to color or get in the way of what you have to do to save that person's life. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and to get them to the hospital alive instead of dead, if at all possible. And Zeus is just like that. And so it's no surprise that I became an EMT. I also became a firefighter with a volunteer fire department along with my husband, but we used to have 600 fire runs a year. And you want to guess how many I had versus the guys? They volunteer firefighters, they work during the day, and at night, if there's any fire calls, they go out on them. Well, I worked at home. I wrote books for a living. And so when the radio would go off with the tones, that meant that I had to jump in my truck and speed down to the firehouse, get into my turnout gear. And usually it was me and one other guy who was homesick that day. One would take the fire truck, the other would take the tanker, because we didn't have fire hydrants out in Ohio where we were at. All we had was a tanker full of 1,800 gallons of water. And so I was either driving the fire truck or the tanker, didn't matter which. And I was called out on 400 calls every year out of the 600. And I was also going when we were getting the night calls also. So that's a Zeus thing to do, dealing with fire. And on the dark side of Zeus, you have people who are arsonists, who like to set fires, that it gives them a thrill. That's the dark side of Zeus, because it's always about fire. So anyway, they can be visionary, they're military minded, and they certainly are. That means they know structure and they know organization and they know how to do it, or they can be taught it. And at the dark end, they can be a terrorist, a fanatic, or a zealot with a cause, right or wrong. They're strategists, they're organized, they're disciplined, they're focused like a laser. And you're going to hear me repeat this because you need to bring all of this information in. Now, a person who is assertive or driven to achieve their goal their dream or their vision, and they're willing to put in the time and the education to do it. This is that sextile on the end of that arrow. You have to work for it. A sextile is a working aspect between two planets working in favor of whatever you want to do. Zeus people are frequently overachievers. They show off. They want attention for right or wrong reasons. And this is usually when they're younger. I find most Zeus males don't really get their stuff together until they're about 30 years old. Most Zeus people have type A behavior. They're impatient. The dark side of that is arrogance. A mature Zeus can be a strong manager, a good manager, and a good leader. Zeus people are also a doer, and they have a favorite saying. They say, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. That's them. They're always focused. They know what they're going to do or need to do, and they get really impatient if people stop them or situations stop them. They get very frustrated, and they have to learn how to deal with that they're not really good at that. So that's another thing that they need to learn. Military career people, or people who were in the military. And by the way, I was in the US Navy for 3 years. I was a meteorologist in the Air Wing during the Vietnam War. I was stateside in San Francisco area of California. Anyway, all Zeus people have a warrior mentality and perspective, but they can also, that's the dark end. The light end is they're a warrior for peace. Think of Greenpeace, okay? Greenpeace will definitely get into your face if you're trying to do something that's not right, but it's still a warrior type of thing. You're always going up against something that needs to be changed, and hopefully for the better. Now, they can, on the dark side, be authoritarian. They can be dictators. They're fascists, totalitarianism. They can be despots. They will not take care of his or her own people in that country. They also want nothing more than greed, control, and power if they're utilizing the dark side of Zeus. And there's all kinds of different adjectives we can use here to see that. Okay, military career person or military people, we've already talked about that. The other category, which is great, is that the Zeus people are highly creative. You'll find them as writers, you'll find them as painters or artists, or you'll find them as someone who has brain children. They come up with these great ideas, and they may start a business just based upon the brainchild idea that they've got, instead of human children. And they're idea people, and they can be visionaries. One side of Zeus, the children or the baby in the family is a big deal, and Zeus wants a big family, and they dote on their children. Now, on the other side, not at the other end, but the other side, we have people who don't want children. They have brain children instead. But it's ideas and it's creativity. Zeus people are frequently teachers of children, kindergarten, grade school. They're good with children and bringing out their creativity and inspiring them toward confidence and self-esteem. Now, another issue with male Zeus is that they may be sexually promiscuous or have extramarital affairs and never tell you about it. If it is a Zeus woman, she is what I call the Amazon stereotype. And I said, think of Pallas Athena here. She was Zeus's daughter. I said, if a man, the men are highly athletic, well-built, they do gym workouts, of course, and they thrive on physical activity as much as they do mental challenge. So they really do both. And also the woman is a feminist. She's a bra-burning feminist. She is not going to take any crap off any patriarchal male. She will confront them fully. So Zeus people are warriors by nature, man or woman. I said they don't necessarily believe peace and diplomacy will bring about results. One type of Zeus believes that action, war, and attacking, assaulting, charging will do it better, quicker, faster in their mindset. I said, but the older, more mature Zeus warrior knows the benefits of peace and will weigh that option. I said, it's the young Zeus warriors who only want war. And on the other end, the mature Zeus person, whether man or woman, I said they are diplomats on a mission to change the trajectory or course of a situation. All Zeus people are brave, courageous, and foolhardy. Just put those right in there, just like that. And I said, a good person to have around in an emergency because they are thinking through the fray. They're not allowing their emotions to pull their attention away from that focus to help that individual or that animal or whatever the situation is. And they are not thinking of themselves, but of another or others who need help. And they will sacrifice themselves if it becomes necessary. And I can't say that about too many other planets that would do that, but Zeus absolutely will. Vocations will involve leadership, being an owner of a business, a manager, or maybe they're going to start up a cottage business in some area, be it the military, the government. And although they are boots on the ground type of military, they also go into the Secret Service, the FBI, the CIA, that type of thing. They can become corporate raiders. Believe me, your corporate raiders are Zeus people because they know exactly what they're doing. They know when to pounce. They know when to make that move. They literally, Zeus is like third dimensional chess players. That is their mindset, a third dimensional chess player. I want you to feel your way through that. When they're looking at something, they're looking at it from angles you haven't even started to ask yourself questions about or even think about. They're already there. So they're also owners of their own business, marketing, advertising, sales, and into the arts and the culture, especially painting and drawing, etc. Another thing that sets Zeus people apart from the others is that they have confidence to burn. And this confidence that they have comes from experience. Don't mistake that the confidence is just because they might have been born with a silver spoon in their mouth. There's that kind of confidence too. But I will guarantee you that a Zeus person, if they're confident about something, it's because they acquired it through experience. This is a very, very profound statement to make. Zeus people have confidence because of the experiences they've had to back it up. And somebody is born with a silver spoon in their mouth who's very rich and is confident because they have money, they're the hollow man or the hollow woman. They don't have any experience. They just got it handed to them on a silver platter. So what? So a Zeus person, when they say something, you better be listening to them because they're not going to waste their time on people who aren't willing to listen and really think about or feel their way through whatever it is that they're giving to you or speaking to you about. Sometimes too much so, if their ego is not balanced with the rest of their psyche, you've got to be careful because I'm a wordsmith as an author, and I do know the difference between confidence and egotism. And Zeus can display both. Zeus can be both, usually in their immature younger years, below 30 years old. After 30, the egotistical is washed out of them, and what's left is the experience, and that builds their confidence. And that's solid. You can take that to the bank. But the egotists are usually male. They aren't the women because women have been suppressed by the patriarchy society that we live in. So you usually have to build confidence. But if you see a woman who's really confident, she's got a strong Zeus in her chart, and you just don't want to mess with her because she's not going to go run away or say, I'm sorry, or let the man do whatever it is. If she knows better because she has experience, she's going to speak up and she's going to speak out, and she ain't moving an inch from her position. On the dark side, they can be egotistical and overbearing, a know-it-all, and you can't tell them a thing, even if you are right and they are wrong. There are those. Stay away from them. They can be narcissistic and they go, me first, last and always. And again, this is the immature side of usually the Zeus male. Zeus people are warriors, man or woman. Young people in general have a short fuse of a temper, and they will utilize assault, attack upon another person. These are what I term young souls. They fall into this category, thinking that war of any kind is not only glorious and the right thing to do, but it is the answer to fix or settle every situation, bar none. You find fanatics, you find people who are in rebellion and revolution here with Zeus people of all ages. With young Zeus people, war is the only right answer. A Zeus middle age or old soul is still a warrior, as maturity teaches them differently about war and battle, that it is not always the final answer to a situation. Instead, the older Zeus look for ways to reduce bloodshed, casualties, and harm to the environment, cities, a country, and get involved in diplomacy and thinking outside the box for ways to resolve a situation if possible. They're a focused diplomat. And let me tell you right now, with this war between Israel and Palestine and Gaza, this is a Zeus situation. Just, it is so plain and obvious. It isn't even funny. This is Zeus in action, both right and wrong. You will find a Zeus person being foolhardy to courageous, and sometimes they will do something courageous that is absolutely foolhardy. But they have so much confidence in their ability to work through the situation to rescue the person or whatever the situation happens to be. They are a good person to have around in an emergency, so long as they keep their head in what's about them. An immature Zeus person can be a narcissistic me first, last and always attitude. They can be overbearing know-it-alls. You can't tell them a thing, even if you are right and they are wrong. I won't mention who that is. They have all this expansive fire energy. The only question is how will they use it? Destructively or constructively? They can see life as a new, improved vision, or they see it as a dictatorship, authoritarian lens instead. They have a stubborn sense of right and wrong. The immature Zeus does not see the gray areas of life, people, or people's actions. A mature Zeus person does. And believe me, in a really dangerous kind of situation or a very important situation where the outcome could really touch a lot of people, you want a Zeus person with that kind of experience in there, because they're not going to let people who know less or think they know a lot more than they do get away with a thing. They're going to confront them. They're going to rein them in, as well they should. They may feel, these ones on the dark end or the immature end, they may feel they are better than anyone else because they have money, fame, or power. That's dark Zeus. And they can be racist, domestic or foreign terrorists, in people or in groups or international terrorist groups. They have gender prejudice. Another word for that is racism. They become religious zealots or fanatics. Think of ISIS, for instance. Now, this is a really important thing for you to remember. Every 5 years, something changes in a Zeus person's life. Doesn't matter which end you're on, okay? This has nothing to do with ends or the middle. It could be a change of job, a move, a marriage, a divorce, a changing of life partners, a birth of a child, birth of a creative idea. Zeus has a 5-year cycle for them. So go back and start looking at, when did you get this job? When did you leave this job? If it was in 5 years, that's Zeus. But it plays over and over again. It is the only one of the Uranians that I have found this particular cycle with. It's a very obvious one, and you can go back. Every 5 years, there's a big change up. But Zeus people have a depth of confidence through experience to handle these big changes in life a lot better than most other planets, whether they're in 3D or 4D. They are a driven person that could become a bully or turn out to be a good leader. You just don't know. They have goals they want to meet. They have discipline toward a goal, whether it is on the dark side or the light side, doesn't matter. Birth of a brainchild, a person who is very creative, comes up with a lot of good ideas. Writers with many books published, that's me. I should be in Ripley's Believe It or Not, I think. I have 225 books published. They are inventors. They are fix-it mentality in every walk of life, from electrical engineer to an electrician as an example. They're just really good at fixing things or figuring out how to fix it. They look at things differently. They see 4D. Remember, this is the third dimensional chess player mind that the Zeus person owns. Doesn't matter if they're the darkest of the dark or the lightest of the light. That is where their entire way of seeing the world is. And if you have any chess players out there, and I bet you do, and if any of you are playing third dimensional chess, you understand exactly what I'm saying. These are not people you can run around and fool, okay? They got you coming and going, and they see it. The immature Zeus is loud, boisterous, and bragging, impulsive, and does not think before they leap. And these are the ones that get into so much trouble when they're young. They'll be on an ATV at 6 years old going 50 miles an hour. This is a Zeus kid. They seemingly, especially in the military, they get into explosives, land or sea mines, the atomic bomb, destructive weapons of all types and kinds are Zeus, guns, knives, ammunition, all weapons of destruction, violence, and war come under Zeus. And also they can be gun hoarders. They can have 200 or 300 guns in their house. We have some of those here in America, unfortunately. Okay, so they are the consummate risk taker, man or woman in life, whether in career or personally. I can't tell you how many times I got fired when I was 20 years old after I got out of the Navy, because I would go to the manager and say, I think that we can do this, this, and this, and make this better and work faster, quicker if we do it this way. And then they fire me, and then they take the information, and then the manager gets it in, and I'm out of a job. But I had no problem getting jobs anyway. But that happened to me many, many times in my 20s. A mature Zeus will harness her or his passion and make either a career out of it or a lifelong hobby. Either way, it's fine. If immature Zeus, if male can be a bed hopper, they also are a manipulator to get sex, or they want or need a lot of sex. They have an exaggerated sex drive, and they can be a sex machine. But again, that's more on the emotional level, that they've been traumatized early on in their first 18 years of life, and they have probably been incested, whether they're a boy or girl, doesn't matter. And so there's a lot behind something like this that's driving them. And again, there's a drivenness to anybody that does something like this. There's reasons behind it, good reasons. Zeus is at their best when life challenges them in some way. They can rise to the occasion. Pardon the pun. We were just talking about sex, so it's my mind. It works different ways. For instance, like they're mountain climbers, they're people who go up sides, faces of cliffs. They get into anything that's going to, in some way, challenge them, and they love a challenge. And when they're older, they don't do stupid things. But when they're younger, they do really stupid things. They end up breaking their arms or their legs or brain injury or whatever. Zeus children can really, especially the boys, really get into a lot of medical issues when they're young. Okay, so now we're going to go to medical rulerships. And I've been a medical astrologer since 1970, or right, 1968. I forget how many decades that is. Anyway, Zeus, when you see it, what it means is that it's procreative, a fertile myrtle. I don't know if you know that saying. It's a US saying, it's slang. Fertile myrtle means a woman that not only loves having children, she can have 5 or 6 or 8 of them, and she loves every last one of them. That's a fertile myrtle. Also easy to become pregnant. It also the birth of a child. Now, Venus, Cupido, and Zeus, these are all 3 Uranian planets, are often involved in becoming pregnant or birthing a child. And I can't get into that today, but I can tell you I have saved a lot of mothers' lives and a lot of babies' lives, because when any of these 3 particular planets get involved in the birth by progression, and I see admetos there, I know that the umbilical cord has wrapped around the child's neck and is going to suffocate and die as it is birthed. And by knowing that ahead of time, you tell the doctor, the gynecologist, and everybody concerned to be doing ultrasound to ensure that that strangulation of the umbilical cord is not around the child's neck. I've lost count of how many fetuses I have saved their lives so that they can be born and become babies, just with this one. And this is why Uranian planets are so, so important. Just doing medical on the Uranians is just mind-blowing. But that's another workshop another day. Anyway, Zeus suffers injury from gunfire and terrorists, whether it's domestic or global. Bomb blasts. Zeus people tend to get around areas where there's a bomb blast or an explosion, a gunshot victim, a crash, whether it's a car, train, plane, etc., or fire, being badly burned. If you see Zeus in your progress chart and it's not looking good with Saturn or Pluto, these are things that could happen to you. Wildfire injury, and also men and women who are hot shots. These are people who go and fight wildfires here in the United States. Firefighters among them as a career. Silo wheat blasts. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but I have, and it kills a lot of people that are in the given area. And it's because of the dust that collects within the silo, and the temperature goes up and there's an explosion. So that's what a silo wheat blast is, in case you don't know. Drive-by shootings, injury by a gang of hoodlums, gangbangers, road rage, and this may be the cause of it or the victim of it. So when you see progress, Zeus, these are things that can happen, providing the rest of the 90-degree chart as it's being progressed is going to back it up and double check it, because there's always a backup on something like this if you see it in the chart. Again, that's another workshop. Now, the interesting thing here about Zeus and medical things is this 5-year cycle. Remember, we just went over that? Never forget this. Every 5 years, they can get into something that is not good for them. And I am qualifying it by what I've just talked to you about here on this slide. So they have accidents occur every 5 years to the Zeus person. I know these people. I see them. I listen to their story. Oh, I broke my toe 5 years ago, and oh, now I have to have a knee transplant or knee surgery. And this is just how it goes with the Zeus person. And if this is happening to them in the medical, then there's a lot of energy that is not being used correctly. And so it's just shooting out every which way in the physical body. And that part of the physical body takes the hit, is what's happening here with this particular situation. So Zeus is also ruler over inflammation, such as sepsis. Sepsis is a poison, and it can move very quickly through a person. It's bacterial. It can kill a person within hours, depending upon their immune system and how strong it is or not, or if you catch it in time. Sepsis is a very life and death type of situation. And so is cellulitis, which means that the legs are going to just swell up like dirigible balloons. That is when the cells get overloaded with water and everything swells. And that too culminates swiftly and rapidly. And it can, with Zeus around, it's always fast and it's serious usually. And it's a rapid onset of some things, such as a sinus infection, flu, cold, asthma attack, spike fevers. Spike fevers are a biggie that show you that there's a Zeus that's active either by transit or by progressions in your chart. Also, a quick death from inflammation, such as bronchial tubes, asthma, or bronchitis attack, or there is a clogging in your vein or arteries, which is going to culminate in either a stroke or a heart attack, and or suffocation if you have severe asthma reaction. Zeus hits hard and fast. That's what you've got to know, that if you see the progressed Zeus in, say, Saturn or with Mars, and you know that that client has asthmatic actions or reactions, you're really diving into that, and you're doing a lot of work to talk to the doctor. I talk to a lot of doctors around the world all the time for the patient, because the patient doesn't know medicalese, and I do, and I can speak to the doctor in that language and try and get him or her to usually do certain types of testing to validate what I'm seeing in that chart for that person. And so many times this has taken place, these extra tests, that if the doctor will go along with it. I never tell them I'm a medical astrologer. I always tell them I'm an EMT, which is not a lie. I'm not licensed now, but I was an EMT, and once an EMT, you're always an EMT. You know the difference between living and dying. They will usually take the test, or you ask them, is there another test that we can pull on this person who's my client, my medical astrology client, and to see and to look deeper or to look into this area or that area when normally they wouldn't. So medical astrologer is a good person to have around in situations like this. And Zeus definitely gets into trouble along these lines. So inflammation driven blood clots that originate in the calf of the leg and moves up to the lungs, the pulmonary. It's called a pulmonary embolism. It's a blood clot in the lung, then through the heart. And if the clot happens to make it through the heart and get out the other side of it, they won't have a heart attack. But if that clot is in there, it can cause a heart attack. But then what happens is the clot then goes up your artery on the side of your neck and into your brain, and then you end up having a stroke. This is called deep vein thrombosis, DVT. It is a genetic predisposition for it in some people, and it causes an overproduction of clots in the lower legs. And so they have to go on a blood thinner to dissolve the blood clots as a result of that for the rest of their lives. Okay, brain injury due to high or sudden spike fevers, bacterial meningitis. And for those who don't know what meningitis is, you get a stiff neck. It's a bacterial type of infection. And the first thing that happens is the person gets a stiff neck. Then they get photophobia, which means light. You can't be in like sunlight or anything like that because it hurts your eyes and you can't stand being in light. You want to be in a darker room or kind of a grayish room. Also, mental confusion, you don't know where you're at. Sepsis, which we've already talked about, is blood poisoning and it moves swiftly. So that's what happens to a Zeus's brain. Those are areas where there can be complications. Another Zeus area, which I can validate, is being struck by lightning. I've been struck twice. Or an electrical shock at the home. I had that happen too, or at work. Or driving to or from work, storm victim of some sort. These are all Zeus related things. Also, Zeus people can get involved in road rage. It's not that you were the road rager, although you can be, but if you aren't, then you're the victim of it. And Zeus people tend to draw this to them. Don't ask me why, I don't have an answer. And if you are the road rager, then you're in the dark side of Zeus because you have to learn how to control your temper. There's a time and a place to show your temper or your anger, but in many times it's the worst thing you could do in most situations. Also, Zeus creates mass murderers who take a gun and shoot up a school, shoot up a church, shoot up and kill people in a grocery store, or like Walmart. We have Walmart here in the United States. It's a big department store. So a Zeus who is at the very dark end and who has real mental health issues, who goes out and does this, they are Zeus people. And that's something that we have to own if we have a strong Zeus in our chart. Okay, uncontrollable anger, obsessive compulsive behavior, rage is the underlying reason for these and many other anger situations that come up. The biggest issue that a Zeus has is their anger. How are they controlling it? Can they control it? Are they controlling it in a positive way or is it negative? An immature Zeus or a young soul Zeus is going to have extremist behavior, possibly. Also, when we're at the light end of that, the extremist behavior then becomes you jog or you do marathons, you jog with shin splints, or you push your physical body until it breaks in some way, shape, or form. Again, this is another way to get anger out, to work anger out, is to do physical exercise, gym, that type of stuff. Stress-related diseases, and there's too many to list. We got so much stress around this world right now. I quit trying to write down all the different types. The issue, though, at the bottom of that stress is that the immune system, our immune system, takes a beating, which means it's not operational 100% of the time. It might be 50 or 60. People who have been abused in the first 18 years of their life end up, if they have a strong Zeus in their chart, their immune system is broken by that. And so there's a lot of things that can be done to help people who are in that type of a situation. Zeus people have a tendency toward high blood pressure, big time, because it is underwritten by the rage or the anger that they feel justified in having, but they haven't let it out, or if they have let it out, it's caused a lot of problems and issues and might even put them in jail or prison. You never know. So the things that you want to look for is the rage, the burnout, and high blood pressure. Pyromania disorder, which is your arsonists who set the fires. A lot of them are Zeus people, wildfires, dumpster fires, so on. They also could get injury on oil rigs, sharp pointed instruments on a machine, or a farm worker. Tornadoes, earthquakes, lightning strike, volcanic eruptions, burns, serious ones are all Zeus. And Zeus people are prone to these types of injuries. And people who have AIDS or HIV, and I've put in parentheses here, Caputo, Venus, Admetus, Hades, and Zeus. Venus is the known 9, the rest of them are Uranian planets, and they all have a part to play if the person gets this type of an infection. Also, Zeus has hidden family, sexual, incest, rape, generation to generation issues. It's a generational miasm. In the United States, we have a saying that you have skeletons in the closet, which means that there's family secrets that are never talked about by anybody and they're never passed on. It's a big secret, but actually what it is a big infection in the family miasm of the generations. And so that can be very detrimental to the children growing up in that type of an environment. All right, Zeus, males, sexual dysfunction, which is caused by prostate inflammation. And it's no fun when you have that at all. Miscarriages happen a lot with Zeus. Infertility issues in men and women. And I put in parentheses here, the microplastics are in everything. And they are upsetting to this day, moving forward for probably hundreds of years. We have microplastics in everything, and that upsets the entire hormonal system of both male and female, but it is particularly problematic when somebody's trying to get pregnant and they can't, or they miscarry because of microplastics or some other situation that may cause a miscarriage. So the infertility issues for Zeus is pretty high. Also, for the woman, there's fallopian tube, ovarian, and uterine issues also. And at the bottom, the potential for a hysterectomy. And because Zeus is a creative planet, it is about creation. And the most beautiful creation, of course, is to become pregnant and to hold a fetus for 9 months and then to birth the baby is the highest, most sacred of all types of creativity. So the Zeus woman runs that particular gauntlet. And it just depends upon how many heart aspects she has in her 360-degree chart, and also to look at the 90-degree dial chart to see if there's going to be issues there. And it's a very heartbreaking kind of situation, in my opinion. Okay, PTSD, part 1. I said there is a war in a dysfunctional family. The child or the young adult must endure for 18 years. This is the Zeus child who's taking this, okay? This is a real war that soldiers fight an enemy. Same for first responders, EMTs, police, and firefighters to varying degrees. They all get PTSD. But the worst type is the family dysfunctional type. And the children grow up in that environment, and it's not healthy for them. They are deformed psychologically, and it's about mental health, and it's about having a type of environmental condition in your family that you cannot change because you're the child and not the adults, and the adults aren't going to change. So you're going to take on the onus of that. But PTSD can certainly be a part of that. A lot of Zeus people have PTSD, and there's many types that create PTSD. As I said, child abuse or abuse of the spouse, opioid crisis. You get in the military, you're really looking at it. Also, fear can come up, childhood trauma of any kind. One thing to keep in mind, if you are into PTSD, you should get a hold of me, because there is a way, at least in the United States, I don't know here in South Africa, but in the United States, there are functional medical doctors who are trained in these situations where you have high cortisol, because that's the fight or flight. The flight is the cortisol, the fight is the adrenaline, and both come out of the adrenals, which are endocrine glands that sit on top of each one of the kidneys. And PTSD people have high cortisol levels. I can tell you how you can get rid of it really fast and really easy. But again, this is in the United States. I don't know what you have in your country, but it is worth looking at. And because you can live with PTSD all your life, and that's just not where you need to go. And I have a lot of information on that for you. If you're interested, you can always email me. Okay, PTSD part 2. I said check for high cortisol levels via functional medicine physician. And I said, go here to look at their directory. And I've got the URL there. This is for the United States. I don't know what's in Europe. I don't know what's in Africa. But for people who are listening to this in the US, we do have the situation such that it's going to help you a lot and to bring those cortisol levels down so that you're at peace finally and you're not always hyper vigilant. Okay, my advice to Zeus people is this. You're the archer with the bow at the same time you are the arrow that you will send into the sky. And I said, make sure you know why you're doing it, that you have thought about it fully and thoughtfully, and do not allow your impatience, which is one of your worst traits, that and anger, to take over and you release that arrow of destiny from the quiver too soon or in the wrong direction. And I said, Zeus people shoot themselves in their own foot. This is true. They don't need any help. They're really, really good at doing this. And when they don't stop and fully think through an action they want to take or a reaction to something and knee jerk, because remember, the anger gets them to the point of where they will knee jerk on something. They'll do it thoughtlessly. They won't think through, okay, if I get angry, what can happen? That a knee jerk doesn't think of anything like that. They're just in the reactive mode and they haven't thought clearly through anything. And there's an old saying that Zeus people really need to keep in mind is measure twice, cut once. That's an old carpenter saying, but I can guarantee you with a Zeus person, especially if they're a young Zeus person. Remember, 30 is that cutoff time between immaturity and maturity. If they're after 30, they are automatically measuring twice and cutting once. But the young Zeus person may think, oh, I've got this and I can see it. And he or she doesn't even bother measuring it. Or if they measure it, you might not have the same measure 2 times in a row and they won't see it. And so it gets cut wrong. So dark side Zeus doesn't go with the saying and the light side does. And then there's another Zeus saying, it's think twice, then act or react lastly. Know where you're sending that fiery arrow. So I wanted to show you something here to whet your appetite to get into Uranian astrology and to use the 90-degree dial by Reinhold Ebertin. I thought that you would love to see this. Okay. All right. This is the 90-degree dial. You've heard me talking about it. Here it is in person for you to look at. And you'll notice that this particular one is my natal chart. Okay. And it shows not only the known 9 planets, but also shows the invisible 8 other Uranian planets in it also. And what you want to understand about this is that each one of these segments is a degree or a year. Okay, you can intersperse either way, or half a degree or whatever. And it's cut into thirds. It has 30, 30, and 30. And so you have a lot of other things with it, which I'm not going to get into today. But what I want to show you is that almost inevitably in every chart, when you put the Uranians in with it, you want to look and see if you have the 2 closest ones that are in it. And what I've done is I've put a red circle down here and you can see Zeus. You know what the Zeus glyph is. Next one to it is Kronos. Now, remember, one sections is 1 degree. And between in my 360-degree dial chart, okay, the Zeus and the Kronos are square to one another. But in a 90-degree dial, you know, if you took your 360 on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and you folded it into quarters, you would have 30 degrees in each one. So the Zeus and the Kronos are both at 20, and there's 1 second between them that's shared. So these two happen to be what I call our superpowers. And I've written a really long, good article on it for the Uranian Astrology Society in the United States. And if I do a course on something like this, the people get that because you have to know what you're looking at and it has to be explained to you. So anyway, this is my superpower. It has to be Zeus conjunct Kronos. Kronos is considered the master of the universe, so to speak, in that they have an ability within them in some area, some occupation. And in mine, it was writing books, and over 225 of them. I'm still writing. I still have my fiction. I have a moon in Pisces, so I need to escape every once in a while too. But that I am what they would call a Zeus person. And that's why I know so much about it, because I are it. I have gone through everything just about that I have put on this slideshow, except for some of the medical stuff. Are smart enough not to do that. Women tend not to be as quick to make a jump as the man is. And that's what saves the Zeus women a lot of times, is they think before they move. Zeus men, they move before they think. And again, this is the immature Zeus between 0 and 30 years old. After that, they get smart. So anyway, this is what a 90-degree dial looks like, graph. It's available everywhere. It's Reinhold Ebertin. It's cosmobiology is what he has created. It really, really works. So that just gives you a little bit. Okay, so here, this is my 360-degree chart. And you can see where my Zeus is at 20 Leo, 27 minutes. And my Kronos is at 20 degrees Taurus, 36 minutes. So I'm wrong. I've got there's 6 minutes difference between them, but that is my superpower right there. And you can then take these Uranian planets and put it into your 360. And with them, I'll give you this much of this, okay? It has to be within 2 degrees to be really activated in your chart with another of the known 9 planets or the luminaries, okay? For instance, my Kronos is at 20 Taurus. My midheaven is 23 Taurus. So that's basically, it's about 2.5 minutes. So it's pretty doggone strong. And also, if there is no, at the outside, 5-degree orb is it for any Uranian planet with any other planet or anything else in your chart that you happen to use, whatever your spaghetti is, okay, is 5 degrees. And that means that you're going to get a very mild, gentle bit of that energy of that particular Uranian planet. But after 5 degrees, it doesn't work, because remember, in 4D, they're bringing the frequency and the energy vibration down so that we as humans in a human body can handle it. So its orb influences are much smaller and far more intense. The more intense that it is, for instance, like Kronos 20, Zeus 20, it's perfect, but it means that it's going to run my entire life for the whole life. And that's what you want to be looking for. You want to see what Uranian planet is the rudder to your ship in this lifetime. Because it's running it. I don't care if you don't believe in it because you can't see it and you say it isn't working. I can prove you're wrong every time, because it is. And wouldn't it be better off rethinking this to know what it is and how it works, and then to turn and reflect it on yourself and say, am I doing this too? Or how am I doing it? Or how much am I doing it? Or should I be doing it at all? Or should I be doing a lot more of it? These Uranian planets are trying to bring us up and make us better human beings, fully engaged in all senses, mind and heart, not just the mind. So to me, it's worthwhile to study the Uranians because of that. I also have a handout that Karen, I think, or Sue is going to give to everybody. Whether they see this video or not, they can certainly have it. It's basically going to complement everything that was on the slideshow. And you can take it and you can start looking, get somebody who has an ephemeris. Penny Bertuelli, or Bertolucci, I think is her last name. It's on the handout. If you can get her book, she has 2 books out on Uranian that are very simple, very straightforward. She's very Zeus-like. Everything is organized. Everything is clean. It's just so beautifully organized that you can pick up so much information. She gives a lot of info on all of these Uranian planets, plus with the known 9 planets. Her books are the ones I recommend if this whets your appetite to try and take a closer look at it. So I think that's it now. Okay, there I go. All right, we're
Fabulous.
back.
Fabulous. Thank you, Eileen. That was amazing.
Good.
And I have sent out your PDF info to everybody.
Good.
And also a lot of the people, we created the solar fire with all the Uranian placement in a 360. So we have already been looking, we just didn't quite know how to work it out and what to
Okay.
do with it. But yeah,
Now you know.
fantastic.
But get the
Yeah.
do you have the 90-degree dial?
I have to play with it because I've never learned it. So I'm going to play. I'm sure Solar Fire does the 90 degree. So
Yeah, but you could go over to Reinhold Ebertein's website. He sells the 90-degree dial sheet and the diagram and everything, okay?
Okay.
And he also has a tremendous amount of information on cosmobiology that is
Yes.
terrific. The man is, to me, he's sacred. He's Kronos. He is Kronos because he's done such a beautiful turn for the entire humanity. Okay. But you won't realize that until you really get into it. And you're also going to realize what strengths you have that maybe you poo-pooed, or maybe you've been wanting to think about it, but you didn't do anything with it. And yet you've got something sitting there, say like Caputo, and you've always wanted to paint, but you've got Caputo that's conjunct, and maybe that's your superpower. Go paint. Go ahead and let these things go and do something with them, because there's something more there that's very valuable, and it's good for you and it's good for our world if it's in the light.
Indeed. And many of us do have a cosmobiology book by Reinhold Ebertein, because if we studied with Rod Susskind, that's one of his prescribed textbooks.
Yeah, it is the best. It is the best. Rod Susskind was exactly right. Good on him.
And we've got your medical astrology book, which I bought from you many years ago. It's in the Kasapa library, so people can borrow it.
That's great. That's good. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And if anybody needs to get a hold of me, you can give them my email address and they can just email me directly, and I'll try and help them if I can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Sue, do you want to say a few words?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Eileen. Really appreciate your wisdom. Fascinating subject, and I think that they would all be worth looking at it at some point. So just much appreciated.
Okay, well, you're welcome. And if any of you start to get involved in it, let me know, because it's very exciting. It changes your perspective on everything in a good way. It just elaborates it. It's like a big red light just out there flashing for you. Whereas before you didn't give it that due. Okay. And that's that superpower energy. Everybody has one. And just that will make you the best that you can be.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for having me, and you have a good evening, and I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. Okay.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you so much.